After days of hiding and planning, Daniel and Anna finally reached a small safe house arranged through a distant family friend of Victor's. For a moment, it felt like relief, a chance to breathe, to imagine a life beyond the shadows. But reality was unyielding. They knew the men from the black car were still searching, and no matter how far they ran, the danger would follow. Daniel's job, his life, his home, none of it could remain untouched by this threat. One evening, as they sat quietly watching the rain streak down the windows, Daniel took her hands in his. "Anna, I love you," he said softly. "But I can't stay here, living in fear forever. And I can't ask you to give up your life either." Anna's eyes filled with tears, her voice trembling. "I know. I've hoped, every day, that we could just leave it all behind. But the past, it's too powerful. It doesn't let me have a normal life, even with you." Daniel swallowed hard. "Then we have a choice. We can run together and risk losing everything, or we can survive separately and hope the shadows stay away from us." She shook her head, clutching his hands tightly. "I can't let them hurt you. Not you. I'd rather let go and keep you safe from my world." They embraced one last time, holding on as if the moment could stretch forever. But the truth was inevitable. They had no choice. In the morning, Anna left quietly, leaving only a note. "I will always love you. Be safe, Daniel." Daniel stayed behind, staring at the empty chair beside him. His heart ached, but he knew it was the only way to protect her, and himself. The rain outside continued to fall, washing the streets clean, but it could never wash away the memory of a love that was real, passionate, and ultimately torn apart by the shadows of the past. The abandoned cabin was dusty and cold, but it offered them temporary shelter. Daniel started a small fire in the corner while Anna rummaged through a loose floorboard she remembered as a child. "Wait," she whispered, her fingers pulling out a small, leather-bound envelope, yellowed with age. "I hid this here years ago. I never wanted anyone to see it." Daniel opened it carefully. Inside were letters, dozens of them, written by her father, Victor Petrova. Most were addressed to a business associate, some to Anna herself, filled with warnings about people who could not be trusted, threats veiled in polite language, and instructions for what to do if danger ever came. One letter stood out, addressed to Anna directly. "If anyone ever comes for you because of me, trust no one. Not the police. Not friends. Only the ones you choose yourself. Remember, some shadows follow longer than others." Anna's hands trembled as she read it aloud. "He knew they'd come for me. He tried to protect me. But he couldn't. And now they're still after me." Daniel folded the letters carefully. "This changes everything. We can't just run blindly anymore. We need a real plan, someone who can help us, legally, without being caught in their game." Anna nodded slowly, tears streaking her face. "I never wanted you involved in this. I wanted a normal life with you. But maybe it's too late." The fire crackled between them, small and fragile, like their hope. Outside, the forest was silent, but Daniel knew the shadows of the past were far from gone. The night air rushed past the car as Daniel gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white. Anna sat beside him, tense, her eyes darting between the darkened road and the rearview mirror. "They're still following us," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the engine. Daniel didn't answer. His focus was absolute. The headlights behind them were persistent, weaving closer with every turn. He knew these weren't random strangers, they were the same men, patient and calculated, determined not to let Anna slip away. "Take the next exit," Anna urged, pointing to a narrow road leading into the forest. "I know a place. I used to hide here when I was a kid." Without hesitation, Daniel swerved off the main highway, tires skidding slightly on wet asphalt. The car plunged into the shadows of towering trees, headlights cutting through the fog behind them. Minutes felt like hours. Every rustle, every distant crack of a branch made their hearts leap. The men in the black car didn't give up. At one point, Daniel risked a glance back, their pursuers were dangerously close, engines roaring like predators in the night. Finally, Anna spotted an old abandoned cabin hidden among the pines. "Here! Stop here!" Daniel slammed the brakes, and they both tumbled out into the damp forest floor, hearts racing. The black car screeched past, too fast to stop. They watched it vanish into the night, leaving them trembling and soaked in fear and relief. Anna leaned against the cabin wall, shivering. "That was too close," she whispered. "If they find us here, I don't even want to think about it." Daniel wrapped his arms around her, holding her tightly. "We're not out of danger yet, but we're still together. That's all that matters right now." Outside, the forest was silent, but Daniel knew it was only temporary. Shadows always returned. That night, after Anna's confession, Daniel couldn't sleep. He sat at the edge of the bed, staring at the rain-soaked window, while Anna dozed fitfully beside him. Every shadow outside looked like a threat. Every sound on the street made his pulse quicken. At dawn, he woke her gently. "We can't stay here. They'll come looking for you, and now for me too. We need to disappear before they close in." Anna's eyes widened with both fear and longing. "Disappear? Daniel, you don't know these people. They'll find us anywhere." "Then we make it harder," he said firmly. "I have some savings. We'll take cash. No cards, no phones. Just essentials. We leave the city tonight." For the first time in weeks, Anna allowed herself a small smile. Fragile, trembling, but real. "And then what?" "Hide forever." Daniel took her hand. "No. We'll find someone willing to listen, someone outside their reach. Maybe abroad. Maybe a journalist, maybe an embassy. There has to be a way." She studied him, her eyes full of conflict, half hope, half fear. "You don't understand what you're giving up. Your life, your job, your future, all because of me." He brushed a tear from her cheek. "None of that matters if I lose you. We'll face it together." By evening, 2 bags were packed. Clothes, documents, a handful of keepsakes. Daniel even carried the old photograph of Anna's father, as if it were a key to unraveling the truth. When night fell, they slipped out through the back entrance, avoiding the main roads. The city lights blurred behind them as they drove toward the highway. For the first time in a long while, Anna leaned her head on Daniel's shoulder. Maybe we really have a chance," she whispered. But in the rearview mirror, Daniel caught sight of 2 faint headlights following them at a steady distance. The chance they were chasing might already be gone. Daniel hadn't heard from Anna in over a week. The threats from the men still echoed in his mind, but what haunted him more was her silence. Then, one rainy night, a knock came at his door. When he opened it, Anna stood there, drenched, pale, her eyes red as if she hadn't slept in days. She clutched the umbrella he'd once returned to her, almost like it was the only thing tethering her to the world. "Daniel," her voice cracked, "I shouldn't be here. But I had nowhere else to go." He pulled her inside, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders, waiting. Finally, she looked at him, tears streaming down her face. "You were right. I should have told you everything. But I was afraid you'd run." Daniel held her trembling hands. "I'm still here, Anna. Tell me." She took a shaky breath. "My father. Victor Petrova, he didn't just die in an accident. He was murdered. He found out things he shouldn't have, business deals, corruption, people with power. They made it look like a crash. And ever since that night, they've been watching me." Daniel's chest tightened. Pieces of the puzzle suddenly fit: the strange man, the black car, her fear. "Why didn't you go to the police?" he asked. Anna shook her head violently. "You don't understand. They are the police. Some of them. They're everywhere. If I speak, I'm finished. Anyone close to me is finished too." Her voice broke as she whispered. That's why I tried to push you away. But I couldn't. I love you, Daniel, and that makes you a target. For a long moment, neither spoke. Daniel pulled her into his arms, holding her as if he could shield her from the entire world. But deep down, he knew love alone might not be enough to save them. That night, Daniel couldn't stay still. The photograph burned in his pocket, each glance at it reminding him of how deep Anna's past stretched into darkness. Against his better judgment, he drove back to her street. The same black car was there, headlights off, engine humming low. This time, he didn't hide. He walked straight toward it. The driver's window slid down, revealing the man from before, the one Anna had spoken to outside the bookstore. Smoke curled from his cigarette as he studied Daniel with cold amusement. "You just don't listen, do you?" the man said. Daniel clenched his fists. "Where's Anna? What do you want from her?" The man chuckled, a humorless sound. "What we want doesn't concern you. What should concern you is staying alive." Before Daniel could reply, the passenger stepped out. Broad shoulders, scar across his jaw. He leaned in close, his voice low and sharp. "She's marked, boy. Been marked since Victor died. Walk away while you still can. Or you'll go down with her." Daniel's heart pounded, but he refused to back down. "She's not alone anymore. If you want to hurt her, you'll have to go through me." The man with the cigarette smirked, as if amused by Daniel's courage. Then his smile vanished. "Careful what you wish for." The window slid up, the engine roared, and the car pulled away, leaving Daniel standing in the dark, his body trembling, his mind spinning. The message was clear, he had crossed a line. And now, both he and Anna were in danger. Despite the note, Daniel couldn't stop himself. He needed answers, not just for his own peace, but because the fear in Anna's eyes haunted him more than any secret could. The next day, he returned to the cafe where they had first met. He asked the barista, a kind old woman named Marla, if she had seen Anna lately. Marla hesitated, glancing around before leaning closer. "She used to come here years ago, before you two ever met. Always with her father. A tall, serious man. Victor, I think his name was." Daniel's breath caught. "Do you still have anything from that time? Anything she left behind?" Marla frowned, then shuffled to the back. After a few minutes, she returned with a dusty envelope. "She asked me to keep this safe once. Told me never to give it to anyone. But maybe you should see it." Daniel opened the envelope with shaking hands. Inside was a photograph, Anna, a few years younger, standing between her father and the same man he'd seen by the bookstore. The three of them looked close, almost like family. But what caught his eye wasn't their faces, it was the background. A car. Black, sleek. Its license plate barely visible, but Daniel recognized it immediately. The same car he had seen parked outside her apartment, watching. His blood ran cold. Whatever had happened to Victor Petrova wasn't buried. It was alive, and it was circling Anna's life like a predator that refused to let go. For the next 3 days, Anna disappeared. Her phone went straight to voicemail. No replies to Daniel's texts. The cafe where they always met hadn't seen her. Even her apartment seemed empty, curtains drawn, mailbox untouched. At first, Daniel tried to convince himself she just needed space after their fight. But by the second night, worry replaced anger. He barely slept, his mind replaying the stranger's warning. Wherever she goes, shadows follow. On the third evening, Daniel drove past her building again. This time, he noticed something different. A black car parked across the street, engine idling, 2 men inside. They weren't neighbors. They weren't casual visitors. Their eyes tracked the entrance like hunters waiting for their prey. Daniel's stomach twisted. He parked a block away and watched for nearly an hour, but Anna never appeared. The men eventually drove off, but the image burned in his mind. She wasn't just hiding from him, she was hiding from someone. That night, Unable to take the silence any longer, he returned to her door. He knocked, then knocked again. No answer. But as he turned to leave, he noticed something wedged under the mat, a folded note. His hands trembled as he opened it. In Anna's handwriting, only 5 words were written. "Don't look for me. Please." The next evening Daniel met Anna at the cafe. At first, everything seemed normal: coffee, small talk, the usual warmth between them. But Daniel couldn't stop replaying the stranger's words in his head. Finally, he put down his cup and looked at her seriously. "Anna, I need to know the truth. About your father. About Victor." Her smile faded instantly. She set her spoon aside, her fingers trembling slightly. "Daniel, why now? Why are you asking me this?" "Because someone approached me last night," he admitted. "He knew your name. He warned me. He said your past isn't what it seems." Anna's face went pale. Her eyes darted toward the window, scanning the street as if she expected to see someone lurking outside. Then she turned back to him, her voice sharp. "You had no right to listen to him. You don't know what kind of lies people will tell. Then tell me the truth." Daniel's voice rose, louder than he intended. "You ask me to trust you, but you hide pieces of yourself like I don't deserve to know them. How can I love someone who keeps pushing me away?" The cafe grew quiet around them, even the barista paused, glancing at their table. Anna lowered her gaze, her voice breaking. "You don't understand. If I tell you everything, you'll leave. Everyone does." Daniel leaned forward, his chest tight. "Then give me a chance to prove I'm not everyone." But Anna shook her head, her eyes filling with tears. "Daniel, some truths don't save relationships. They destroy them." She grabbed her coat and left, the sound of the doorbell echoing through the cafe, leaving Daniel staring at the half-finished coffee between them and the widening crack in the fragile glass of their love. It was late when Daniel left Anna's apartment. The streets were nearly empty, the air heavy with the promise of rain. As he walked toward his car, he noticed a figure leaning against the wall near the corner, watching. At first, he thought it was just a passerby, but then the man stepped forward. The same tall man from the bookstore. His presence was deliberate, his eyes sharp. "You should be careful," the man said, his voice low. "You don't know what you're getting into with her." Daniel froze, his instincts screaming at him. "Who are you?" The man ignored the question, lighting a cigarette instead. The flare briefly illuminated his face, sharp features, eyes that carried years of bitterness. "She's trouble, that girl. Wherever she goes, shadows follow. Ask her about her father, about Victor. Ask her what really happened." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Why don't you tell me?" The man smirked, taking a drag. "Not my story to tell. But don't say I didn't warn you." Before Daniel could respond, the stranger turned and disappeared into the night, leaving only the faint trail of smoke behind. Daniel stood still, his heart racing. The warning echoed in his mind like thunder. What really happened? When he finally drove away, he couldn't shake the feeling that Anna's past wasn't just a wound, it was a storm still waiting to break. A week later, Daniel and Anna sat on the rooftop of her apartment building, overlooking the city lights. The night was quiet, the hum of distant traffic a gentle backdrop to their conversation. Daniel finally gathered his courage. "Anna, I saw someone last week. A man. I think I even heard your name. Who was he?" Anna tensed, staring out over the skyline. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then, in a low voice, almost a whisper, "It was my brother. Or at least, someone I thought was. Victor's cousin." Daniel frowned. "Victor?" Her eyes glistened in the moonlight. "My father. He died when I was younger. The accident, it wasn't really an accident." Daniel reached for her hand, but she pulled it back slightly, as if afraid the gesture might break her composure. "I've never told anyone," she said, her voice shaking. I didn't want anyone to get too close. I couldn't, not after everything that happened. Daniel's chest tightened. The woman he was falling for had lived through shadows he could barely imagine. But even with this revelation, she was sitting here, with him, choosing to share a piece of herself. Anna, he whispered, you don't have to carry it alone. I want to be here, if you let me. She looked at him, her expression torn between longing and fear. Finally, she nodded, almost imperceptibly. Maybe, someday. But not tonight. Not yet. And just like that, the night ended in silence, heavy with unspoken truths, the beginning of a love that was as fragile as it was inevitable. That night, Daniel couldn't sleep. The sound of the man's voice echoing Anna Petrova wouldn't leave his mind. Until now, Anna had been like a book he loved reading but whose final chapters were missing. Now he had a clue, a single word that might open those hidden pages. The next day, while Anna was busy at work, Daniel sat at his laptop and typed her name into the search bar, Anna Petrova, city name. Dozens of results appeared. Some were ordinary, social media profiles, mentions in event listings, but one headline caught his eye. Local businessman's tragic accident leaves family in shadows. Daniel clicked. The article was dated 3 years earlier. A man named Victor Petrova had died in a mysterious car crash. The article mentioned his wife and a daughter, Anna Petrova. Daniel's heart raced. Could it be her? The details were vague, but one sentence chilled him. Authorities suspected foul play, but no charges were filed. The family remained silent. He leaned back in his chair, the glow of the screen casting shadows across his face. Anna, the woman who made him laugh, who carried an invisible sorrow, had a past rooted in tragedy. That evening, when they met, he wanted to confront her. But as she smiled and told him about her day, the words stuck in his throat. He couldn't bring himself to shatter that fragile light in her eyes. Instead, he only asked, carefully, Anna, do you ever feel like the past never really lets go? She froze for a split second, just long enough for him to notice, before answering with a soft, almost rehearsed smile. Every day, Daniel. Every single day. One Saturday afternoon, Daniel was running errands in the city center when he unexpectedly spotted Anna across the street. She wasn't alone. She stood near a bookstore, speaking with a tall man in a dark coat. Her body language was different, tense, almost defensive. The man leaned toward her, saying something Daniel couldn't hear. Anna's eyes flickered with unease. Then, just as quickly, she noticed Daniel watching. Her expression froze. In an instant, she ended the conversation, gave the man a sharp nod, and walked away, straight toward Daniel. Hey, she said too quickly, her smile forced. What are you doing here? I could ask you the same, he replied, searching her face. Who was that? No one important, she said firmly, brushing the question aside. Just someone I used to know. But Daniel wasn't convinced. The man had turned his head slightly before leaving, and Daniel had caught the faint sound of his voice calling after her. Anna Petrova. The name hit Daniel like a strange echo. Petrova. He had never heard her last name before, she had carefully avoided mentioning it. Why now, and why did it sound like a reminder she didn't want? As they walked together, Daniel noticed her grip tighten on his arm, as though she feared he might slip away. Don't ask about him, she whispered. Please, Daniel. Just don't. He nodded slowly, but inside, curiosity had already begun to burn. Who was that man? And why did her name feel like the beginning of a secret she never intended to share? Over the next few weeks, Daniel and Anna saw each other often. Sometimes it was at the cafe where they had first met, other times they walked along the river or sat on park benches talking for hours. The conversations flowed easily, about books, movies, childhood memories, but never about her past. Daniel found himself drawn deeper and deeper into her world. She laughed in a way that made him forget time, and her thoughtful silences fascinated him as much as her words. Yet, every now and then, something felt off. Once, when they walked past a certain street, Anna suddenly changed direction without explanation. Another time, while they were having coffee, she glanced nervously at the entrance, as if expecting someone to walk in. And whenever he asked about her family, she skillfully avoided the question, turning it into a joke or changing the subject. One evening, as they sat near the river, Daniel decided to push just a little. "Anna, do you ever regret things? Things you've left behind?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she stared at the water, the reflections of city lights flickering in her eyes. "Regret," she finally said, "is like carrying stones in your pockets. You can only swim for so long before you drown." The word struck him, both poetic and unsettling. He wanted to reach for her hand, to assure her that whatever haunted her, she didn't have to carry it alone. But when he moved, she stood up abruptly, smiling as if nothing had been said. "Come on," she said lightly. "Let's walk. The night's too beautiful for heavy thoughts." And just like that, the moment slipped away, leaving Daniel with more questions than answers. The city was quiet as they stepped into the cool night air. Streetlights stretched their shadows across the wet pavement, and the distant hum of traffic echoed faintly. Daniel walked beside Anna, carrying the umbrella though the sky was clear. For a while, they said nothing. Their steps fell in rhythm, as if their silence itself was a kind of unspoken conversation. Finally, Anna broke it. "You're different, Daniel." He turned to her, surprised. "Different how?" "You listen even when you don't understand. Most people rush to fill silence with words. But you let silence breathe." Daniel smiled faintly. "Maybe that's because I like hearing what's hidden between words." Her eye softened at that, but the softness didn't last. She looked ahead, her voice quiet again. "My past has too many hidden things." He wanted to ask more, but something about her tone warned him not to. Instead, he shifted the conversation. "Then tell me something not hidden. Something about now." She paused, then looked up at the glowing windows of the buildings around them. "Now. I like this walk. I like that it feels easy." When they reached her building, an old, ivy-covered place tucked between two newer blocks, she stopped at the gate. "Thank you for walking me," she said, her voice soft but final. Daniel nodded, not wanting to press further. But just as she was about to turn away, she added, "And Daniel, don't try too hard to understand me. Some things are safer left in shadows." She disappeared inside, leaving him standing alone beneath the dim streetlight, holding the umbrella, and the weight of a warning he couldn't ignore. Daniel stared at her, puzzled. "You left it under the table." "I saw it." Anna sat down slowly, her fingers brushing the umbrella's handle. For a moment, her expression softened, almost nostalgic, then quickly turned guarded again. "You shouldn't have picked it up," she said quietly. Daniel blinked. "Why not?" Her eyes met his. They were calm, but there was a flicker of something deeper, sorrow, maybe even fear. "Because it wasn't just an umbrella," she whispered. "It belonged to someone I promised I'd never see again." The words made his chest tighten. He wanted to ask who, but he sensed the question might break the fragile trust forming between them. Instead, he leaned back, his tone lighter than he felt. "Well, maybe fate wanted me to return it. To you." Anna studied him for a long moment, then finally allowed herself a small smile, though her eye still carried that hidden weight. "Fate is dangerous," she murmured. "It always asks for a price." Before he could reply, she stood up. "Walk me home, Daniel." And just like that, the tension melted into something gentler, but the shadow of her words lingered in his mind, turning the simple act of holding an umbrella into the beginning of a mystery he wasn't sure he was ready to solve. The next evening Daniel returned to the cafe, the umbrella carefully wrapped in a plastic bag. He wasn't sure why he came back. Maybe it was just to return what wasn't his, or maybe because a part of him secretly hoped she would appear again. The cafe was quieter this time, the storm replaced by a clear sky. He sat at the same table, placing the umbrella on the chair beside him, rehearsing in his mind what he might say if she walked in. Minutes passed. Then an hour. No sign of her. He began to feel foolish. Just as he was about to leave, a familiar voice spoke behind him. "So, you found it?" He turned, startled. Anna stood there, her coat draped over her arm, her hair shimmering in the dim cafe light. Her eyes fixed on the umbrella. Daniel smiled, relieved. "You forgot it yesterday. I thought you might need it again." But instead of gratitude, she tilted her head, her smile faint but unreadable. "Funny. I don't remember leaving it behind." For a moment, silence stretched between them. Daniel frowned, confused. He was certain it was hers, he remembered seeing it beside her chair. "Maybe it wasn't yours?" he asked cautiously. Anna looked at him, her gaze sharp and strangely distant. "No," she whispered, almost to herself. "It was mine. I just don't understand why you have it." Her words hung in the air like an unfinished puzzle. When Anna and Daniel finally stepped outside, the rain had stopped. The streets glistened, reflecting the dim lights of the cafe. They walked together in silence for a few steps, neither wanting the evening to end too quickly. At the corner, Anna stopped. "This is where I turn," she said softly. Daniel nodded, unsure of what to say next. He wanted to ask for her number, but something held him back, a strange hesitation, almost fear of breaking the delicate thread that had just been woven between them. So instead, he smiled. "Maybe I'll see you here again." "Maybe," she replied, with that same mysterious smile from earlier. She turned and disappeared into the narrow street, her figure fading into the shadows. Daniel sighed, telling himself he might never see her again. But as he started walking home, he noticed something lying on the cafe steps, a small, folded umbrella. It was hers. He picked it up, staring at it for a long moment. The scent of her perfume lingered on the handle. Something inside him whispered, "This isn't over. This is just the beginning." At first, silence lingered between them. He stirred his coffee nervously, while she pretended to continue reading, though her eyes no longer followed the words. The storm outside hammered against the windows, forcing them both into an island of shared space. Finally, he broke the silence. "You must really like that book. You haven't looked up once since I came in." Her lips curved into a slight smile. Or maybe I was just pretending to avoid conversation. For a moment, he wasn't sure if she was teasing or being serious. But the glimmer in her eyes gave her away. "What's it about?" he asked. "A story of love and betrayal," she replied. "But don't worry, I won't spoil the ending for you." He leaned back, intrigued. "I'd take spoilers over silence any day." That answer made her laugh, and it surprised them both. The laughter cut through the heavy air, and suddenly, the storm outside felt like background music. Minutes turned into an hour. They spoke of books, music, and travel dreams. He learned her name, Anna. She learned his, Daniel. Neither noticed that the cafe was slowly emptying, nor that the rain had begun to fade. By the time they realized how long they had been talking, it already felt as if they had known each other far longer than a single evening. And yet, both of them left the cafe that night with a quiet thought echoing inside: why did it feel so different, so important? It was a rainy April evening in 2017. The city was wrapped in a grey mist, and the streets glistened with reflections of neon lights. She sat alone in a small cafe by the window, a steaming cup of tea beside her, and an old novel resting open in her hands. Her long hair fell over her shoulders, slightly damp from the rain. He entered the cafe in a hurry, shaking raindrops from his jacket. The place was crowded, filled with students, couples, and people escaping the storm. The only empty chair was across from her. He hesitated for a moment, she looked so absorbed in her book, but then approached her table. "Excuse me, is this seat taken?" he asked softly. She looked up. Her eyes were calm but curious. After a short pause, she smiled faintly and shook her head. No, it isn't. That single exchange, so ordinary on the surface, was the silent spark of something neither of them could predict. As he sat down, the storm outside grew stronger, while inside the cafe, something subtle but powerful began to shift. A story was about to start.